I'm Mila, and I'm a mom to a boy with autism. I hope that you enjoy my channel. I wanted to share my experience as a new mom to a boy with autism. We just found out a year ago. And there's many things I wish I had known as a mom, and I hope it helps you if you're on the same journey. So today I want to talk to you about early signs that looking back, can see that they were clear signs, but at the time I didn't put two and two together to come up with to realize that it was autism. I think many people, there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation about what autism is. And when we first started questioning whether it could be autism, we talked to the teachers at the kindergarten, and we were always met with no, because he has good eye contact and he plays with other kids. He sometimes needs to, after he's played for a little bit, he needs to go and retreat to like a quiet area and charge his battery again, but then he goes back and plays again, and he has good interactions with the other kids. So no, he has good eye contact. It's not. So I wish, that everyone knew that good eye contact doesn't mean that a kid or someone cannot be autistic. And had we had an earlier diagnosis, we would have avoided, maybe not, but maybe we could have helped him earlier on and changed our communication style and changed the way we did certain things. I think a lot of things we did intuitively. You get a feeling that when something works. So I was always very much very strict with routines, because I saw that if we moved away from a routine, he would immediately react to that. So I was always very strict with routines and following my gut in terms of, okay, he doesn't want to eat, just give him what he wants, because the most important thing was to get him to eat. So I'll start when he was a baby. He was born early. He was born about 3 weeks early and weighed 2.5 kilos. So he was very tiny, and he didn't make the premature group by a couple of days, I think. At the time it was like, and he was tiny, and we always kind of joke with my husband, because he was born with this expression of like, he was upset, and it lasted for a few hours. And he has until today a very hard time with transitions and changes. So we always say that already then he was not happy about this big change in his life, like most babies aren't, who doesn't want to stay inside a warm and cozy, but he really was unhappy. And I also have a daughter who's younger, and that wasn't the case. She when she was born, it was a different experience, and every baby is different, obviously, but we could really see that he was having a hard time with this. And then we were, I was a new mom, so everything was new, and I think that was part of the issue, that it's hard to know to follow what a normal development is for kids, because you follow these. I'm sure all moms look at the milestone charts and what should my baby be doing at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and you kind of check if they're doing it, and we were always a little behind, just a little in some of the things, but then he would catch up like a month or two later. He would be doing the what is expected. So, and then you never take them, you know, just so. But I thought, okay, he was born about a month late, so it's okay. He's like about a month late with that. That was my rationale behind it. He had sleeping troubles from day one. He wouldn't sleep, like all newborn babies wouldn't sleep through the night, but he would also have a hard time napping during the day. So we could never get him to nap more than 20 minutes. And in order to fall asleep, both for a nap and for the night sleep, he would have to held in someone's arms. So we would take turns, and it would take about 2 hours to get him to fall asleep. And it was really, and then he would be sometimes waking up every 2 hours at night. He never had like a big, I think we can count the amount of times when he was a baby that he slept like 5 hours in a row. So we were really exhausted, and to make it even more difficult, at around 6 months we started with solid foods, and you know, you start with just the fruit purees, and it was really hard for him to adjust to that. He didn't really like eating solids, so I relaxed it. I tried again later, and he was only happy with being breastfed, and it couldn't be like frozen bottles that I would pump and put in the freezer, and he didn't like that. He just wanted fresh milk, and it had to be like, it was also like his way of feeling safe and protected. And I felt that. I felt instinctively that I had to nurture that. But then at around 8-9 months, I could see that the development of learning to eat solids and expanding his palate, it was not that wasn't happening so much. So I had to really stop breastfeeding it. It was about 9 months or 10 months, and focus only on solid foods. And at that time, I had to go back and take an exam, I remember, and I was studying, and I had a friend who was coming and babysitting for me, and he didn't like the frozen milk, and I had stopped breastfeeding at the time also. So in order to fall asleep, he needed either breast or a bottle that would do. And I left her with these bricks of formula. And he had had formula once or twice before, and it had been okay. And I remember coming home, and he had the formula, and I could see that he was swallowing, and he was having an allergic reaction to the formula. His ears were like 2 red peppers. And we called emergency right away, and it was an allergic reaction to the formula. So that was forever out of the question. But we did find a formula was more hypoallergenic. We tried it, and that worked. So that we could complement the eating, or the very little eating he was doing, with some formula. But I remember there was only 1 or 2 fruit purees he liked. So I had to put on the tip of the spoon that puree, and then anything else that I wanted him to eat, because otherwise he wouldn't open his mouth. I remember this desperation that he wouldn't eat. And until today, he's a extreme selective eater. He has like a safe food list, because food causes anxiety for him, and it's out of his control. And looking back, I shouldn't have done that with the spoon and the fruit. He didn't trust me, but he was, you know, when you're desperate because your kid doesn't eat, and anyone who has experienced this knows. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, and plus the allergic reaction, I think, could have also had an effect on his trusting food. There's a condition called ARFID. If you don't know about it, look it up on Google. It really cleared up things for me in terms of what he feels, how he feels around food, and it's kind of like it's an anxiety-inducing situation for him, and food has never been an interest. He eats because he needs to survive, and we need to make sure that he does, because he doesn't feel hungry or thirsty many times. He has the proprioceptive issues also, where he can't feel his body. He can't tell if he needs to go to the bathroom, for example. So he either doesn't have to go, or he really has to go, and he had to go 5 minutes ago. So potty training was really late, and it took a lot of work and a lot of time to potty train him. So there were a lot of sensory issues looking back. So yeah, he also was a bit of a late talker. Now I can't remember when it was, but I think it was around a year and a half or two, around there. He was mumbling a lot. And at the kindergarten, they thought he was talking in Italian because we speak Italian at home. And he wasn't. It was just his own gibberish. But then one day we were sitting here in the kitchen, and it was dark. You know, in Denmark we have very dark winters, and it was in the morning, but it was really dark outside. And he went up to the window and looked at me and said in Spanish, a full sentence. He hadn't spoken a word except for mom, dad, and he's like, the birds are still sleeping. And we all looked at each other like, what happened? Because he went from 0 to 200 so suddenly he started speaking, and he started speaking in Danish in the kindergarten, and Spanish and Italian here at home. So it depended who he spoke to. And all of these, I had always, and I'm sure there's a bit of it that comes from that when you expose a child to many languages. So it can delay the development of language, because there are different systems that need to be in place. And so I always, you know, and maybe that was it. Because once he got it, and he really got it. He was hyperlexic, so that means he learned his ABCs right around that time. It became a major focus, the ABCs, one of his special interests. Kids with autism have usually a few special interests are absorbing, and they dedicate every play activity is about that, and they only want to do that. They take over. There's no other toys that are interesting unless it's about that. And for him, it was the ABCs. And then suddenly it became also animals and ABCs. And he would line up. We had these rubber letters, and he would line up the whole alphabet on the floor, and then he would take all the animals and put like for each letter the initial of for A it was ants or whatever. He had all the animal figurines also. He would put the letter with the corresponding animal, and first he would do it in English, and then he would do it in Italian, and then he would do it in Spanish. So he really had this machine going, and he would do the same, for example, with the animals. He would classify them, like if he was really interested in where they lived and what they ate and in which continent, and he would separate like the savanna animals from the jungle, from the farm, and they couldn't mix. Like if I jokingly took a pig and put it in the savannah, he would get so mad and so upset that I didn't understand or follow the system. And he never played like, you know, here comes an animal and attacks the other one, or like this interaction. He didn't play that. For him, it was facts. Like, these are animals that live here, they eat. He was interested in food chains, who eats who, and it was very organized, you know. And then with the letters, it was really funny. I remember we had these, as I said, these rubber letters, and one time he was lining them up, and there was, the N was missing. And he was like, Mom, the N. And I said, yeah, it's gone. It's not here, it's gone. Yeah, but you have to find it. And I said, okay, let me go look for it. And he's like, oh, by the way, the N is orange, because every letter had a color, and he remembered that the N happened to be orange and that I should look for something orange. And at that point, I realized he had such a photographic memory for everything. He looks at something and he remembers the picture. So he's a visual thinker. So he can, I've asked him, if you have to think about something, do you see a picture or do you think of concepts in your, and he always sees the picture. He sees the picture of what he remembers seeing. So that's very unusual. And then, yeah, and then he was so interested in language. Like he was, so one day I went to the kindergarten and he was showing me the table where he was eating, and they had this table chart where they had all the kids where they were sitting. And he went to the chart, and they had just gotten new places to sit at, and I asked him, where do you sit now? Who do you sit with? And he just went to the chart and said, and that's where I sit, and there sits Thomas, and there sits Peter, or whatever. And then he looks at the chart and says, and there sits so and so, and there sits so and so. And his teacher, who had been his teacher at nursery, I knew him really well. She looks at me and she says, you know, I think he's reading. And I said, no, because he remembers everything. He has such a good memory. She's like, no, I don't think, because we just got these new places. And I mean, I don't think he's remembering. So we went to another table, and he looked at the chart, and I said, can you tell me who sits here? And she said, there's no way he'll remember this. And sure enough, he starts reading the chart and pointing to each spot on the table and who's sitting where and with whom. And at that point, I got really scared. He was 3.5. And people people were like, oh, but that's amazing. He's so smart and everything. Yeah, he is. He is really smart, and it's something that's gonna help him in life for sure. But at that time, I felt that he was really gonna have a hard time socially with other kids, that he was not gonna be sharing interests, and that he was gonna have a hard time because he was gonna be on a different channel, so to speak. And I remember feeling this sadness, and it's really hard to explain it, but it'll be something. It's a blessing, and obviously, but I could see that it could also be something that was not going to help him in some areas. He played, this is the thing, he had friends. Usually throughout his life, he's always had like 1 or 2 good friends, but he also relates to the rest of the kids. And he's been always good at relating to other kids, especially if they follow his interest. And he was also playing in the playground. He was following, the game. And when it was too wild, like if it was like running or like more physical games, he would go inside, be quiet, be alone a little bit, and then when things calmed down, he would join again. And we asked about this at the kindergarten, and they said, well, he needs his time off, and that's really good that he knows when to go back and be in a quiet room. So they didn't think much of it. So we didn't think much of it either. But we could see, for example, he never had this fantasy world where he played role playing, for example, or he never. I remember one time we arrived and I was picking him up from kindergarten, and all the kids were running. You know how kids run, like running from one. Everyone was following each other, running one way, running the other way, and he was just standing on the side looking and trying to make sense of this nonsense for him. It wasn't fun for him. It didn't make sense. Things had to make sense. Every time there was, and until today, it has to make sense to him. Otherwise, he's not gonna be part of it. And sometimes making sense for him is not what I would say it makes sense for me. So usually it has to have something to do with what his interests are, or it has to be based on where he's coming from. And although we train a lot to take turns and adjust also to what other people need, we train that a lot with my daughter, so they can play together, and for every time they play something that he likes, he also has to make an effort and try to play something that she likes. And we're working on that, and it's working out, because he knows that it's not as fun. He doesn't enjoy it so much, and he gets tired quite quickly when they play things his sister wants to do. But it's a way he's learning to adjust to other people's needs and interests, and that will serve him in life. So what else? Sometimes he walked on his tiptoes, but it was rare, and every time I looked it up online, it kind of said, like it'll go on its own. If it's persistent, then you should consult. And it was occasionally, it was once in a while. So, but then when he was around 6, I guess, he was still doing it, and I thought, well, that now he shouldn't be doing. I knew that at 6 years old he was too old to be doing it, and that was a bell that rang. Another red flag for me was I wouldn't say he's challenged in terms of coordination, but for example, he cannot how do you call this? He cannot swing on a swing. Even though we've explained the mechanism and everything, he has a very hard time, and he's always had a hard time and could never really find out how to. Or when he was a baby, he would hate tummy time and rolling, whereas with my daughter it was totally natural. I really had to stimulate him. He did it late. He didn't like doing it, but I really stimulated him to do it. And because I did, then we didn't catch the issue. So a lot of things I think could have been. Sometimes as moms, we are insecure because yeah, because the chart says he should be doing this at this time. And so we tried to get them to do it. And if they do it, great, they meet the check. But sometimes we just need to listen to our intuition and really talk to our doctor or to professionals, because we are often moms. We are often accused of being too sensitive, too overprotective, and God knows I've been called that. I was sheltering my son too much because I was protecting him from stimuli because I could see he was stressing. I was a bad mom because he was only sleeping in my arms. He wouldn't sleep otherwise. I was also spoiling him because I was only making him the food that he would eat. Yeah, he wouldn't eat. We tried giving him, like, not giving him food or presenting what was, whichever it was that we were all eating, he wouldn't eat it. And then he wouldn't eat the next day. And his stomach would get smaller and smaller, and he would become so dysregulated because he was hungry and angry, and it just didn't work. It didn't work. And I come from a family that is very traditional, and you know, we got to eat what was on the table, or we didn't get to eat at all. And I come from a family that is very much that's the line of thought in terms of education and bringing up children. And honestly, and everything I did I felt like I was doing everything wrong. And they were, you know, when we started complaining also to the school that something was going on, because he was coming home and was so unhappy at school. The first reaction was, everything's fine at school, it must be at home. The problem must be at home. You have to put more limits. You have to put more timeouts. You have to put more strict rules. And we had tried all of that to get a worse result. And honestly, the timeouts and the time off the iPad it was causing more meltdowns, and the meltdowns were getting bigger and bigger, and we just didn't know what to do until we decided to take things on our own. We went online, and the first thing I found was the biggest issue at the time was the eating. So I did a lot of research. I found about RFID, and then suddenly I found all this sensory processing disorder information, and I realized, okay, he definitely has SPD. So then I had two pieces put together, and then I looked at comorbidities of SPD, and I thought, well, he's not hyperactive at all, but he has this focus on just his special interests. And I thought, could it be ADD? Because his anxiety levels are out of this world. And yeah, it could be. I read all the description. I thought, oh, but it also could be like autism. And so we started going to different therapists, and they all coincided from day one that he fit the autism criteria. And yeah, he is sometimes on a good day you wouldn't be able to tell at all. And when he has a bad day, yeah, it's not a pretty sight, because he's having a really hard time. And I feel like the only people who've always knew, or always even not knowing, were us, where we were even looked at as bad parents because we were trying to accommodate his needs, even without knowing that he had a diagnosis. So my putting the whole picture together wasn't easy for us. We, especially because we had so many, he's fine, we don't see any issues, but also because we had to deal with the guilt of feeling like you're a bad parent because everyone around you seems to think that you're not doing a good job because you're trying to alleviate the issues that you see your kid is having trouble with or having a hard time with. And in that sense, yeah, now we are completely dedicated to this and we really want to do anything we can to help him. So we're at 30 minutes now, so I'm gonna let you go, but I will appreciate any comments, and yeah, follow me. I'm new on this, so I hope you join us. Bye.